Let's talk about some factoring rules that you need to know, starting with greatest common factor. So in this first example, you're trying to see what's in common and factor it out. So with a 3 and a 12, they're both divisible by 3 because factoring means divide. X squared and x, you'd factor an x out. And so when you do that, what do you have left? Well, looking at these two terms, 3 divided by 3 is 1, so it's factored out. X squared divided by x leaves you with just an x. Plus, rinse and repeat. 12x divided by 3x. 12 divided by 3 is 4, and the x is factored out. And you can always check these by distributing, because distributing means multiply, where factor means divide. Then with four terms, if you ever see four terms, you try and group them together, the first two and the last two. With the first two terms, it looks like I can factor just an x out, leaving me with 2x plus 1. Always drop the middle sign. With the last two terms, I can factor a 5 out, 2x plus 1. And now I have the 2x plus 1s in common that I will factor out. If I factor the 2x plus 1s from each of those terms, I'll be left with the outside x plus 5. And then you get to this, and you're like, what is going on? So I see two big terms separated by a plus sign. 4 and 6 are both divisible by 2. X and x squared are both divisible by x. 2 plus x to the 2/3, 2 plus x to negative 1/3. I'm going to take out 2 plus x to what power? That's the question. To answer that question, I want to give you a side quest here, so check it out. If I gave you x to the 5th plus x to the 4th, what would you factor out of there? X to the 4th. What would you be left with? X plus 1. So let's make sure we got that logic, okay? 5 and a 4, you took out the 4. So what did you do? You factor out the smaller. 2/3 and negative 1/3. What are you going to factor out? It's always the smaller power. So that means you're going to be factoring out, in this case, a negative 1/3 power. That's the first thing you need to know. You're factoring out the smaller power. Now, what do you have left? Well, let's go back up to here on the top right corner. When you factor the 4 out, factor means divide. When you divide with exponents, you're subtracting. So really what you did here is you subtracted 4. That's why you have x to the first power. You subtracted 4, and x to the 0th power is equal to 1. Same idea down here. If I factor out a negative 1/3, I'm going to subtract a negative 1/3. Listen to what I just said. I'm going to subtract a negative 1/3, which means I'm going to add a 1/3 power when I finally get the final answer or next step to this problem. If you don't see that, again, go back up to the side corner here. If I gave you x to the 2/3 plus x to the negative 1/3, just those alone, what would I factor out? An x to the negative 1/3. And then what would I be left with? Well, if I take out a negative 1/3, that means I'm subtracting a negative 1/3 power. If I add 1/3 up here, I'll get x to the first. If I add 1/3 up here, I'll get x to 0, which is 1. So back down here, now I'm going back to the beginning. 4 divided by 2 is 2. X is factored out. 2/3, I'm factoring out a negative 1/3, which means I'm taking away a negative 1/3 power, which means I'm adding a 1/3 power. That's 2 plus x to the first power. Plus, because of the plus, rinse and repeat. 6 divided by 2 is 3. X squared divided by x is x. Negative 1/3, factor out a negative 1/3, and it's gone. Now, the only thing you really have to do left here, let's go ahead and take all of this. No, I don't want just that. I want the whole thing. All that. All right, let's do that. Let's do that. Let's do that. Not really that. I don't know what that was all about. Okay. I just want the word factoring out of the way. There we go. Okay. So to finish it up, we got to clean up some things. 2x. Typically, you don't want a negative power in the final answer. So negative 1/3 power, now that it's all factor, you can bring to the denominator, make it a positive 1/3 power. Clean up what's inside the brackets. Distribute. 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times x is plus 2x plus 3x. That will give you 2x times 4 plus 5x divided by 2 plus x to the 1/3 power. One more? All right, let's do one more. Here we go. So the directions would be factor. 5 and 15, both divisible by 5. Why the negative 2? Why the negative 3? Which one do I factor out? Y to the It's always the smaller of the two powers. -3 is smaller than -2. 3 plus y to the fourth, 3 plus y to the second, you take out a 3 plus y to the second power. Now we go back. Okay, here we go. So let's see. Looking at this term first. 5, factor out of 5, it's gone. Y to the -2, if I factor out a -3, I'm subtracting a -3, which means I'm adding 3, giving me y to the first power. 3 plus y to the fourth, 3 plus y squared, I'm left with 3 plus y squared. Plus, plus, do it again. 15, factor out of 5, that means divide, you get a 3. Y to the -3 is factored out. 3 plus y squared is factored out. To finish this up, bring the y to the -3 down. 3 plus y squared, I'd probably leave alone here. This one you may be asked to go ahead and square, but the main point of this question, how far you're supposed to go, I would anticipate some type of multiple choice answer eventually because there's a few different iterations of this. But the main thing I wanted to make sure you understood how to do was to factor out that negative power. Beyond that, the other factoring rules you need to know to kind of wrap up this video is, remember trinomials? A trinomial with a single x squared in front, you just do the whole add multiply. What multiplies to 8 and adds to 6? It'd be 4 and 2. So you have to remember how to factor trinomials. If there's a number in front, though, it's called the AC method. However, a lot of times you just guess and check. You'll go, okay, 2x times x, 1 and 1, and then figure out plus and minus. So you eventually get to, okay, it's going to be plus and minus because it's plus 1x minus 2x, give you that -1x in the middle. And then lastly, remember this? Just a difference of squares. So there you go with factoring, but I'm pretty sure the main meat of this video was making sure you understood how to work out this problem and this problem. So make sure you can follow those.